The message arrived at exactly 3:47 in the morning, Earth Standard Time, came through every communication channel humanity had ever built. Radio waves, quantum links, satellite networks, all of them carried the same words in perfect English. Translated by technology far beyond anything humans had created. Park Do-yeon was sleeping when his assistant woke him. He'd been dreaming of his home in Busan, of the ocean waves hitting the rocks near his childhood house. Now he sat in his small room on Earth's orbital station, reading words that would change everything. To the species known as humans, the message began. You have been observed. Your recent achievement of faster-than-light travel has brought you to our attention. The Galactic Council, governing body of 47 spacefaring civilizations, hereby summons your representatives to Nexus Prime. You will be offered membership in the Council. Terms will be provided upon arrival. Refusal is not advised. Do-yeon read the message 3 times. He was 62 years old. Had spent 30 years in the Navy before becoming a diplomat. Had negotiated with presidents and generals, with corporations and criminals, but this was different. This was first contact with alien life. He sent the message to Earth immediately. Within 6 hours, the world knew. Within 12 hours, panic had spread across every continent. Within 24 hours, the United Council of Earth held an emergency session. And within 48 hours, Park Do-yeon received his orders. Go to Nexus Prime and hear what they have to say. The journey took 3 weeks. Humanity's new faster-than-light drive installed on the diplomatic vessel Baidu was still experimental. The ship shook and groaned as it pushed through the strange space between stars. Do-yeon spent most of the trip studying everything humanity knew about the galaxy, which was almost nothing. When they arrived at Nexus Prime, Do-yeon understood why the Council had ruled for 12,000 years. The planet was not a planet at all. It was a constructed world, built from the corpse of a dead star. Surface stretched endlessly in every direction, covered with cities that reached into the clouds. Ships moved through the sky like flocks of birds, thousands of them, millions perhaps. And at the center of it all stood the Grand Chamber, a building so large that it had its own weather system inside. Do-yeon and his small team were escorted through corridors made of materials he could not name. Aliens of every shape and size walked past them. Some had scales, others had feathers. Some floated without legs, others crawled on dozens of limbs. None of them looked at the humans. They were beneath notice. The Grand Chamber was full when they entered. Thousands of delegates sat in rising circles around a central platform. At the highest point sat High Arbiter Velos, a tall creature with silver skin and 4 arms. His eyes had no pupils, just endless black pools that seemed to absorb light. Humans, Velos said. His voice filled the chamber without effort. We have come. This is why. As Do-yeon stepped forward, his translator device hung around his neck, turning his words into something the aliens could understand. We received your summons. We are here to listen. Velos made a gesture that might have been a smile. Good. Then listen well. The Galactic Council has maintained peace in this region of space for 12,000 years. We've welcomed many species into our protection, and we offer the same to you. A screen appeared in the air before Do-yeon. On it were the terms of membership. He read them slowly. Humanity would surrender 40% of all resources in their solar system. They would accept a Council military base on Mars. They would limit their fleet to 20 ships. They would not expand beyond their current territory without Council approval. They would adopt Council law as supreme authority. They would pay tribute every standard year in exchange. They would receive protection from external threats and access to Council trade networks. Do-yeon kept his face neutral. He had negotiated enough deals to know when he was being robbed. This was not an offer of membership. This was conquest wrapped in polite words. May I consult with my government? He asked. Velos waved a hand. You have 3 days, no more. Do-yeon returned to the Baidu. He sent the terms to Earth through their quantum link. Then he waited. On Earth, Secretary General Kim Yuna read the document in her office in Geneva. She was 58 years old, a former professor of international law who had never expected to lead humanity through anything like this. But here she was, holding the future of her species in her hands. She called a meeting of the United Council. Representatives from every nation attended, either in person or through holographic link. They argued for 2 days straight. Some wanted to accept. The council had thousands of years of experience in technology beyond imagination. Fighting them would be suicide. Better to survive under their terms than die free. Others refused. Humanity had not crawled out of the caves, survived plagues and wars and disasters, built ships that could cross the stars, only to become servants to alien masters. If they accepted these terms, they would never be free again. Kim Yuna listened to every argument. She studied the reports from Dayun, the analysis from their scientists, the fears and hopes of 8 billion people. And on the morning of the third day, she made her decision. She wrote a single word on her tablet and sent it to Park Do-yeon. No. Do-yeon received the message. He read it once, then put on his formal uniform. He walked back into the grand chamber, where Velos and thousands of delegates waited for humanity's answer. The chamber fell silent as he approached the central platform. "Hi, Arbiter," Do-yeon said. "I bring the response of the human species." Velos leaned forward. "Speak." Do-yeon looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him. He thought. About Earth, about his home in Busan, about every human who had ever lived and died and dreamed of the stars. "We decline your offer," he said. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Do-yeon had ever heard. No species had refused the council in 12,000 years. The delegates stared at him as if he had grown a second head. Velos sat frozen. On his throne, his black eyes fixed on the small human standing before him. "You decline," Velos said finally. "Yes," Do-yeon replied. "We decline." He turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the silence shattered into chaos. High Arbiter Velos did not sleep for 3 days after the humans left. He stood at the window of his private chamber, looking out at the endless city below, trying to understand what had happened. In 12,000 years, no species had ever said no. Some had tried to negotiate better terms. Some had begged for mercy. Some had cried, but every single one of them, from the mighty Kelix to the peaceful Malari, had eventually accepted. They had no choice. The council was too powerful, too old, too vast to refuse. And yet these humans, these small soft creatures from a tiny blue planet, had looked him in the eye and walked away. There must be a mistake, Velos said to his advisors. A translation error. Perhaps they did not understand the terms. His advisors agreed because they always agreed. That was how one survived in the council. Velos decided to send a second delegation. This time, he chose the Malari. They were known throughout the galaxy for their ability to persuade. Their voices could make enemies into friends, could turn anger into peace. Surely they could make these humans see reason. The Malari ambassador was named Beth. He was old even by his species standards, with silver scales that had faded to white and eyes that had seen 1,000 negotiations. He traveled to the human solar system with a staff of 20 diplomats. Carrying revised terms that Velos hoped would satisfy the stubborn creatures, they arrived at Earth's moon, where humanity had built their first permanent base. Commander Lee Hagen met them at the landing pad. Hagen was 45 years old, a career military officer who had helped design the moon base's defense systems. He was tall for a human, with broad shoulders and a face that rarely smiled. He did not trust these aliens. He did not trust anyone who came with terms and conditions. But orders were orders. Secretary General Kim Yuna had instructed him to receive the delegation with respect. So he shook Ambassador Vietz's hand and led them to the conference room. Choi Somi was waiting for them there. She was the diplomatic attaché assigned to handle alien relations, though until now, there had been no aliens to relate to. She was 32, sharp-minded, and fluent in 6 Earth languages. She had spent the past month learning everything she could about council species from the data park Do-yeon had sent back. She smiled warmly as the Malari entered. "Welcome to Luna Base. Please, sit. Would you like some tea?" The Malari looked confused. They had expected fear, perhaps anger. They had not expected tea. Veth sat across from Somi, while his staff arranged themselves around the room. Hagen stood by the door, watching everything with careful eyes. "We come with good news," Veth began. His voice was smooth, almost musical. There was something in his tone that made you want to agree with him, to trust him completely. High Arbiter Velos has reconsidered the original terms. He offers new conditions that we believe you will find more acceptable. He placed a data tablet on the table. Somi picked it up and read through it slowly. The new terms reduced the resource tribute from 40% to 30%. The military base would be smaller. Humanity would be allowed 25 ships instead of 20. Everything else remained the same. Somi finished reading and set the tablet down. She looked at Veth with calm eyes. "Thank you for coming all this way, Ambassador. The Council's willingness to revise their offer shows respect. We appreciate that." Veth relaxed slightly. Perhaps these humans were finally being reasonable. However, Somi continued, "We have prepared our own proposal." She slid a second tablet across the table. Veth picked it up, and as he read, his silver face grew pale. Full sovereignty for humanity. Equal standing with all Council species. Mutual non-aggression treaties. Free trade without tribute. No military oversight. No territorial restrictions. Veth looked up. This is not how things work. The Council does not negotiate. The Council offers terms, and species accept them. This has been the way for 12,000 years. Then perhaps, Somi said gently, it is time for a new way. Vith's smooth voice cracked slightly. You do not understand what you are doing. The species that accept Council terms receive protection. Those that refuse. There have been no species that refused, but there are stories. Old stories. About worlds that were made examples of. Hagen stepped forward from his position by the door. His voice was hard. Is that a threat, Ambassador? It is history, Veth replied. I am trying to help you. I am trying to save your people from making a terrible mistake. Somi stood up. She was shorter than everyone else in the room, but somehow she seemed to fill the space. Ambassador Veth, we have read your history too. We know what happens to species that join the Council. Their growth stops. Their culture fades. They become dependent on Council resources and Council protection until they forget how to stand on their own. In 3 generations, they are shadows of what they once were. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. Humanity is young. We have made many mistakes. We have hurt each other in terrible ways. But we have also dreamed bigger than any species we have encountered. We went from stone tools to starships in 10,000 years. Your Council took twice that long. She turned back to face Veth. We will not trade our future for safety. We will not give up our freedom for comfort. If you cannot accept us as equals, then we have nothing more to discuss. Veth stood slowly. For the first time in his long career, he had no words. His gift of persuasion, the talent that had ended wars and sealed treaties, had failed completely. I will report to the Council, he said quietly. I hope you know what you are doing. Somi smiled, though her eyes were serious. So do we, Ambassador. So do we. The Malari delegation left that evening. Their ship jumped back to Nexus Prime, carrying the worst possible news. Within hours, every delegate in the Grand Chamber knew what had happened. The humans had refused again. Not just refused, they had made demands. They wanted equality. They wanted freedom. High Arbiter Velos sat on his throne and felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. Not fear of the humans themselves, but fear of what they represented. If word spread that a species could refuse the Council and survive, others might get ideas. The entire system, 12,000 years of careful control, could crumble. He called an emergency session of the Inner Circle, the 5 most powerful species in the Council. When they gathered in his private chamber, his words were simple. We must make them an example. Before it is too late, the debate that followed would shake the galaxy to its core. The Grand Chamber had never been so loud. Delegates screamed at each other across the vast space. Some called for immediate war. Others urged patience. A few sat in silence, watching the chaos with troubled eyes. High Arbiter, Velos let them argue. He needed to see where each species stood before making his move. The Vorn were the loudest. They were a warrior species, tall and powerful, with thick green skin and tusks that curved from their lower jaws. They had joined the Council 8,000 years ago, but they had never truly accepted peace. War was in their blood. Destroy them, the Vorn delegate shouted. Send a fleet to their system and burn their worlds. Show the galaxy what happens to those who defy us. The Kellics agreed. They were smaller than the Vorn, but twice as cruel. Their empire had been built on conquest before the Council absorbed them. They missed the old days. The Droth said nothing, but their representative nodded slowly. The Droth were patient hunters. They did not speak often, but when they acted without mercy. On the other side stood the Malari, shaken by their failed negotiation. Ambassador Veth spoke carefully. Perhaps we should study them more before taking action. Their technology is young, but they advance quickly. Faster than any species we have recorded. In 200 years, they went from ground vehicles to starships. We should understand how this is possible. The Terry delegate remained quiet. Her name was Nara, and she was one of the oldest members of the Council. The Terrier had founded this institution 12,000 years ago, back when they believed they were bringing order to chaos. Now she was not so sure. She watched the arguing delegates and felt tired. So many years of the same patterns, a new species emerges. The Council makes them an offer. They accept, or they are destroyed. And the Council grows larger, but never better. Was this really what her ancestors had wanted? Far across the galaxy, Admiral Beak Syogen stood on the bridge of his flagship, Nadocto. He was 53 years old, with gray hair cut short in military style and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before the world finally found peace. Now he commanded humanity's stellar Fleet 42 ships, barely enough to patrol their own system. His intelligence officer, Lieutenant Kong Mingi, approached with a tablet. She was young, only 28, but she had a gift for finding information that others wanted hidden. She had spent the last month breaking into Council communication networks. "Admiral," she said, "you need to see this." Syogen took the tablet and read the intercepted transmissions. His face grew darker with each line. "They're planning an attack," he said. "Yes, sir. The Vorn, Kellics, and Droth are forming a coalition. They're calling it a punitive expedition. 200 warships." Syogen set down the tablet. 200 ships against their 42. The math was simple, and it was not in their favor. "How long do we have?" "The Council hasn't approved the action yet. There's still debate. But if the coalition gets their way..." Minji paused. "Maybe 3 months. Maybe less." Syogen nodded slowly. 3 months to prepare for a war they could not win. 3 months to find a miracle. "Get me Secretary General Kim," he said. "And tell the engineering teams to work faster. We're going to need every advantage we can get." On Nexus Prime, Counselor Nara made a decision that would be considered treason by many of her people. She used her private communication channel to contact Earth directly. The face that appeared on her screen belonged to Kim Yuna. The human leader looked tired but calm, as if she had been expecting this call. "Counselor Nara," Yuna said, "this is a surprise." "I'm taking a great risk by contacting you," Nara replied. "If the Council discovers this conversation, I will be removed from my position. Perhaps worse, then why call?" Nara was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was heavy with centuries of doubt. "I have served the Council for 400 years. I have watched species after species accept our terms. I have told myself that we were protecting them, guiding them, helping them grow. But I have also watched what happens after they join." She looked directly at Yuna through the screen. Their fire goes out. Their creativity fades. They become comfortable, and then they become dependent, and then they become nothing. Shadows that vote as they are told and fight when they are ordered, and never question anything. Yuna listened without interrupting. "You are the first species in 12,000 years to refuse," Nara continued. When I heard what your diplomat said in the chamber, I felt something I have not felt in centuries. Hope, and then fear, because I knew what the Council would do to you. What will they do? The Vorn Coalition is pushing for war. High Arbiter Velos is afraid of what you represent. If you succeed in defying us, others might try. The entire system could collapse. Yuna's expression did not change. So they will destroy us to preserve their power. Yes, unless what? Nara leaned closer to the screen. Unless you show them something they have never seen before. The Council respects strength. If you can make them believe that attacking you would cost more than they are willing to pay, they might hesitate. And if they hesitate, the Coalition will fracture. The Malaria already have doubts. Other species will follow. You want us to bluff? I want you to survive. And perhaps in surviving, change everything. Yuna considered this for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. We have a saying on Earth, Counselor. Never bluff unless you can back it up. What does that mean? It means we're not planning to bluff. Nara stared at the screen. For the first time in 400 years, she felt something like excitement. What are you planning? Yuna's smile grew. You'll see, Counselor. The whole galaxy will see. She ended the transmission, leaving Nara alone in her chamber, wondering what these strange, stubborn, possible humans had in mind. On Earth, the preparations accelerated. Admiral Seojin worked 20-hour days. Overseeing the construction of something that would change the balance of power forever, Lieutenant Minji continued breaking into Council networks, feeding him every piece of intelligence she could find, and in hidden shipyards throughout the solar system. Humanity built its answer to the coming storm. They had 3 months. They would need every second. The Vorn Armada was a terrifying sight. 200 warships emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the human solar system, their hulls dark against the endless black of space. Each ship was massive, built for destruction. Carrying weapons that had burned a dozen worlds to ash over the centuries, Warlord Thrace stood on the bridge of his flagship. The Crusher. He was the largest Vorn anyone had ever seen, nearly 3 meters tall, with scars covering his green skin from countless battles. He had personally killed 4 species' last defenders. The humans would be his 5th, report he growled. His tactical officer, a smaller Vorn with 1 missing tusk, pulled up the sensor data. We detect 42 human ships positioned near the asteroid belt. No other vessels in range. Their planet is undefended. Thrace smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. 42 ships. Against 200. They have courage, these humans. Stupid courage, but courage. Sir, there is something else.
Oh.
The tactical officer hesitated. Our sensors are detecting anomalies. Throughout the asteroid belt, thousands of them. We cannot identify what they are. Thrace waved a massive hand. Probably mining equipment. These humans are infants in space. They do not know how to build proper weapons. Begin the approach. Standard attack formation. The Armada moved forward like a wave of death. 200 ships carrying enough firepower to shatter continents. Advancing toward a species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 5 years ago. On the bridge of the Docto, Admiral Beak Seojin watched them come. His face was calm, but his heart beat faster than it had in years. Everything depended on the next few hours. Status report, he said. Lieutenant Kong Minji checked her screens. All 42 ships in position. Defense grid standing by. The Vorn are approaching at standard speed. They'll reach weapons range in 18 minutes. Seojin nodded. Open a channel to all ships. The communication officer connected him to every vessel in the fleet. Seojin's voice carried across space to thousands of crew members waiting for his words. This is Admiral Beak Seojin. You all know why we're here. 200 enemy ships are coming to destroy our home. They expect us to be afraid. They expect us to surrender or die. He paused. They don't know us very well. He looked out at the stars, at the distant Armada growing larger every moment. Humanity has faced extinction before. plagues that killed half our population, wars that burned our cities, disasters that should have ended us. But we're still here. We're still standing. And we will still be standing when this day is over." His voice hardened. "Every species in this galaxy thinks we're weak because we're young. Today, we teach them otherwise. Today, we show them what humanity can do when our backs are against the wall." He ended the transmission and turned to Minji. "Activate the defense grid." Minji pressed a sequence of commands. Throughout the asteroid belt, thousands of objects that had appeared to be rocks suddenly came alive. Lights flickered on. Weapons systems powered up. Targeting sensors began painting the approaching Vorn fleet with acquisition locks. 3,000 autonomous defense platforms, hidden in plain sight, each carrying enough firepower to destroy a cruiser. On the Crusher, alarms began screaming. "Warlord," the tactical officer shouted. "The anomalies, their weapons platforms. Thousands of them. They have targeting locks on the entire fleet." Thrace stared at the sensor display, unable to believe what he was seeing. The asteroid belt that had seemed empty was now glowing with threat indicators. His fleet was surrounded by fire points they had not even noticed. How was this possible? He demanded. "Our intelligence said they had only 42 ships." "They do have 42 ships, sir. But these platforms, they're automated. No crews. And they were built to look like asteroids." Thrace felt something he had not felt in decades: uncertainty. His fleet was the mightiest in the coalition. But 3,000 defense platforms, combined with 42 warships that were faster and more agile than his own, created a tactical nightmare. He could win, probably, but the cost would be enormous. Half his fleet, maybe more, would be destroyed. And word would spread throughout the galaxy that the mighty Vorn had been bloodied by a species that shouldn't have been able to put up a fight. "Warlord?" Incoming transmission from the human flagship. Thrace snarled. "Put it through." Admiral Beak Seogen's face appeared on the main screen. His expression was calm, almost friendly. "Warlord Thrace," Seogen said. "Welcome to our solar system. I apologize for the poor welcome, but we weren't expecting guests." Thrace leaned forward. "You think your toys frighten me, human? I have destroyed species stronger than yours. I have burned worlds that laughed at my approach. Your little platforms will not save you." "Perhaps not," Seogen replied. "You might win this battle. But let me ask you something, Warlord. What will you tell the Council when you return with half your fleet destroyed? What will the other species say when they learn that a young, weak, primitive species cost you 100 ships?" Thrace said nothing. "We did not refuse negotiation because we are arrogant," Seogen continued. "We refused because your terms were not a negotiation. They were a demand for surrender. Humanity does not surrender. But we are not your enemy." He paused. And when he spoke again, his voice was broadcast to every ship in the Vorn fleet and through intercepted frequencies, to Nexus Prime itself. "Stand down and let us show you another way. A way where strength does not mean domination. A way where species can work together as equals, not masters and servants. We offer this to you, Warlord. To all of you. A chance to be better than your history." Silence stretched across the void. The two fleets hung motionless, weapons locked. Waiting for the order that would begin the slaughter, Thrace stared at the human on his screen. He thought about the glory of battle, the honor of victory, the screams of dying enemies. He had lived for these things his whole life. But he also thought about the sensor data. 3,000 platforms, 42 ships that his officers admitted were faster than anything in his fleet, and a species that had prepared all of this in just 3 months. What else had they prepared that his sensors couldn't see? "Warlord," his tactical officer said quietly. "Your orders?" Thrace stood frozen for a long moment. The weight of 12,000 years of council tradition pressed down on him. No species had ever made the council back down. If he retreated now, he would be remembered as the first Vorn to run from a fight. But if he advanced and lost half his fleet, he would be remembered as a fool who threw away lives for pride. He made his choice. "All ships," he growled. "Reverse course. We are returning to Nexus Prime." The bridge crew stared at him in shock. "Did you hear me?" Thrace roared. "Move!" The armada turned. 200 warships, the pride of the coalition, began the slow journey back the way they had come. On the Dokdo, Admiral Seogen let out a breath he didn't know he had been holding. His crew began to cheer, but he raised a hand for silence. "This isn't over," he said quietly to Minji. "This is just the beginning." She nodded. "What do you think the council will do now?" Seogen looked out at the retreating armada, at the stars beyond, at the vast galaxy that was just beginning to notice humanity. "I don't know," he said, "but whatever it is, we'll be ready." The news spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. The Vorn armada had retreated. The mighty coalition, 200 warships strong, had turned back without firing a single shot. A species that had only discovered faster than light. Travel 5 years ago had made the council blink. No one could believe it at first. There were claims of sensor errors, communication failures, but the truth was undeniable. The ships returned to Nexus Prime with their weapons unfired and their pride shattered. Warlord. Thrace gave his official report to the council. Unfavorable tactical conditions. No one believed him. Everyone knew what had really happened. High Arbiter Velos tried to maintain control. He called for unity, for patience, for a second expedition with more ships. But the cracks in the council had already begun to spread. The Malari formally withdrew from the coalition. Ambassador Veth gave a speech in the Grand Chamber that would be remembered for centuries. Perhaps he said, "We have been doing this wrong for 12,000 years. Perhaps it is time to listen to what these humans are trying to tell us." The Terrier said nothing publicly, but Counselor Nara worked quietly behind the scenes. She contacted species that had grown tired of council control. She shared intelligence about humanity's technology, their culture, their strange belief that all beings deserved freedom. Slowly, carefully, she built a new coalition, not for war, but for change. 3 species requested direct talks with Earth, bypassing the council entirely. Then 5, then 12. Each one was met by Ambassador Park Do-yan, who had become something of a legend throughout the galaxy. The human who had said no, he sat across from alien delegates in meeting rooms on Earth's moon, on orbital stations, on the Baekdu as it traveled between stars. He drank tea with creatures that had no mouths, and debated philosophy with beings that had for brains. And slowly, one by one, he signed agreements that would have been unthinkable just months before. Mutual respect, equal treatment, free trade, no tribute, no submission, no masters and servants. Secretary General Kim Yuna watched these developments from her office in Geneva. She had not slept properly in months. The weight of leading humanity through this crisis had aged her. But there was a light in her eyes that had not been there before. Her assistant entered with a message. She read it twice, then laughed, something she had not done in a long time. "What is it?" her assistant asked. "An invitation," Yuna replied. "From the Galactic Council. They want us to come to Nexus Prime, not as supplicants this time. As observers, the journey to Nexus Prime was different this time. Humanity did not send a single diplomat in an experimental ship. They sent a delegation of 30 aboard the Dokdo itself, Admiral Seogen's flagship, escorted by 12 of their fastest vessels. When they arrived, they found a changed world. The endless city still stretched to the horizon, the ships still filled the sky, but there was something different in the air. Uncertainty, possibility, the feeling that the old rules no longer applied. Secretary General Kim Yuna walked into the Grand Chamber with her head held high. Ambassador Park Do-yan was at her right side, Admiral Baek Saiyajin at her left. Lieutenant Kong Minji and Commander Lee Haejin followed close behind. Choi Somi had remained on Earth to coordinate with their new allies, but her work had helped make this moment possible. Thousands of alien eyes watched as they crossed the chamber floor. Some looked at them with fear, others with curiosity, a few with something like admiration. High Arbiter Velos sat on his throne, watching them approach. His silver face was unreadable, but his 4 hands gripped the armrests tightly. Humans, he said. "You have come." Yuna stopped before the central platform. She did not bow. "We have," she replied. "You invited us as observers. But if you're willing, we have something to say." Bellows hesitated. The chamber fell silent. Every delegate leaned forward, waiting to hear what these impossible creatures would do next. "Speak," Bellows said finally. Yuna climbed the steps to the central platform. She had given speeches before to the United Nations, 2 world leaders, 2 billions of people watching through screens. But this was different. This was the first time a human had addressed the galaxy itself. 12,000 years ago, she began, this council was founded with a simple idea: peace through unity. Your founders believed that if all species worked together, they could end war and suffering forever. It was a beautiful dream. She paused, looking around the chamber. But somewhere along the way, that dream became something else. Unity became control. Peace became stagnation. Species that joined the council stopped growing, stopped dreaming, stopped reaching for the stars. They were safe, yes. But they were also trapped. Bellows shifted on his throne. Other delegates exchanged uncomfortable glances. "When you summoned us, we were terrified. You were so much older, so much more powerful, so much more advanced. We thought we had no choice but to accept your terms or die." Una smiled slightly. "But humans have never been good at doing what we're told. We asked ourselves, what kind of future do we want? One where we survive but never truly live? Or one where we risk everything for the chance to be something more?" She turned to face Velos directly. He chose to risk everything. And now, here we are. Not as conquerors, not as subjects, but as something the Council has never seen before. A species that refused to play by your rules and survived. Alessa's black eyes stared down at her. "What do you want, human?" "We want what we've always wanted. To be treated as equals, to make our own choices, to reach for the stars without asking permission." She gestured at the thousands of delegates around them. "And we believe many of you want the same thing. You've just forgotten that it was possible." She raised her voice so it carried to every corner of the chamber. "We came to the stars not to conquer and not to submit. We came to meet you as equals. Some of you fear what we represent. But fear is the old way. We offer a new one. Cooperation without chains, strength without domination, unity without surrender." The silence stretched. Yuna could feel the weight of 12,000 years of tradition pressing against her words. "The galaxy is vast enough for all of us," she said. "The only question is whether you are ready to share it." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, from the far side of the chamber, a single delegate rose from her seat. It was Councillor Nara of the Terrier, her ancient face calm, but her eyes bright with emotion. She began to clap. It was a human gesture, one she had learned from watching their broadcasts. It felt strange to her, this slapping of hands together. But it also felt right. Another delegate joined her. Then another. Then dozens more. The applause spread through the chamber like fire, growing louder with each passing second until it thundered off the walls. Not everyone clapped. The Vorn delegate sat with his arms crossed, his face dark with anger. The Kelix and Droth remained silent. High Arbiter Velos did not move from his throne, but the majority of the chamber was on its feet, applauding, cheering, crying out in languages that had no words for what they were feeling. Secretary General Kim Yuna stood on the platform and watched it happen. Tears formed in her eyes, though she quickly blinked them away. The old order did not fall that day. The council would continue for years to come, arguing and debating and struggling to adapt. Some species would resist change until the end. Others would embrace it with joy. But something new had been born in that chamber. A seed of hope, planted by a young species that had refused to accept that the way things were was the way things had to be, and humanity stood at its center, unbowed and unbroken, ready to face whatever came next. Admiral Siajin leaned over to Ambassador Dojin. "Do you think they'll really change?" Doyon watched the cheering delegates, the silent opponents, the ancient arbiter who looked so tired on his throne. "Some of them will. Others won't. But that's not really the point." "What is the point?" Doyon smiled, the first real smile he had allowed himself in months. The point is that they know change is possible now. They've seen it happen. And once you know something is possible, you can never truly go back to believing it isn't. Siajin nodded slowly. He looked at Yuna, still standing on the platform, as the applause finally began to fade. She looked exhausted and triumphant and afraid all at once. He asked, "Now?" Doyen turned toward the chamber doors, toward the ship waiting to take them home, toward the vast universe that suddenly seemed full of possibilities. Now the real work begins. They walked out of the grand chamber together, leaving behind a galaxy that would never be the same.